Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to project, we're gonna call this Good Enough. Now I decided on the name Good Enough for this thing after one of you guys mentioned it in the comments, and I'm sorry, I cannot remember who that was exactly, but I thought, you know what? That's a good name that suits this thing quite well. All right, so now that we've got the brakes done, the steering done, the throttle done, and the parking brake done, it's time to finish the last piece of the puzzle, the shifter. As I mentioned in the last video, I was discussing using the original parking brake handle from the cabover as the shifter. Now, of course, this does present some challenges. I've never built my own shifter before, so this will be a new experience for me. So this thing is just entirely too long. The other problem is this thing doesn't have any kind of safeties on it, of course, as far as a detent plate or anything like that, or a park lock, or a reverse lockout to keep you from bumping it into reverse, that type of thing. Now for me, that doesn't really bother me. I've driven vehicles before with no type of shifter safeties or whatnot. You can just go through the gears and you're relying on the detent in the transmission itself. For me, that doesn't really matter too much, but because of the weight of this truck and how big this thing is gonna be, I want it to be safe. And I'm gonna go ahead and try to make my own detent plate and my own safeties. Now the other plan as well is to use the original release handle here for the safety handle, if you will, to release it out of park or to put it back into reverse. So I've been putting a lot of thought into this behind the scenes and trying to figure out the best way to do it. Basically, I'm just gonna wing it. I think I've got an idea of how I wanna lay it out and how I wanna get it done, but of course, my mind starts turning. I start overthinking it. I'm trying to keep it really simple. Shifters are not complicated. They're very basic and very simple, and that's what I'm trying to do. So I've got a bunch of extra miscellaneous parts here that I'm going to try to incorporate. I went down to the hardware store and I got some plastic bushings, some bronze bushings, some bolts, washers, spring washers, that type of thing. All right, so the first two things that I need to do is I need to figure out my handle height. And then the other thing is I need to figure out my cable routing. You can see this thing is just too tall and it will hit the dash up here. So I've been messing with this thing, just trying to kind of figure out my placement where I think I want this thing to be. I just had a piece of scrap rod here that I was kind of playing with. And you know, this is 16 inches long. So I figure if I have the shifter itself 16 inches, and then when I build the base of the shifter and everything, the pedestal, it'll come up a little bit. So if I'm somewhere right up in here, it'll be comfortable. I'll probably have to lean forward a little tiny bit just to grab onto this thing, because I kind of want to tuck it a little bit underneath the dash. Plus it needs to go all the way back into first gear without hitting the seat as well. But I'll try to play with that placement a little bit later. All right, the next thing that I need to figure out is my cable routing. Now, I'm not sure where the cable is going to hook to the shifter, if that's going to be up inside the cab or if it's going to be below the floor. So I'm just going to bolt the cable up and lay it out and then kind of figure out how long it is and how much length that I actually have to play with here. This is all the original motorhome stuff, and it just bolts right up to the bell housing of the transmission. And again, the whole thing with this project is trying to utilize as many of the old parts as I can. That's my goal with this thing. Got the cable routed here, and then obviously I got to figure out how I'm going to route it around the throttle. I can't, interfere with any of that. So all this stuff, I just got to play with it as I go along here. Okay, I've got the cable hooked up to the transmission. Now this thing is designed to pull forward. It's going to go through the gears like that. And all the way back will be park. When I figure out my shifter length and where my fulcrum is going to be, I'm going to have something below it to hook up to the cable. So as this thing is pushed forward in park, it's going to push that cable back, and then vice versa. As you pull it back, it's going to pull the cable out. So it looks like I've got plenty of length on this cable to go up through the floor, I believe. I'm not sure how I'm going to route this just yet. I was thinking about just poking it through the front of the doghouse cover itself. That would be really simple if I could do that. But then if I have to take the doghouse cover off, I'm going to have to disconnect the shifter. I don't want to get into any of that. I think that's going to be too much of a headache. Might be pretty steep going up through the floor, up underneath it here, and then having to bend it up, kind of weird up into the, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to figure all this stuff out. This cable is pretty rigid and it does not want to bend very easily. The straighter the shot, obviously, the better it's gonna be. Okay guys, here's where I'm at. Basically nowhere. I've been doing a lot of thinking. So this cable is gonna have to go underneath the floor. It's just too sharp of a bend to get this thing up into the cab through the floor that way. This is a shifter boot off of a B&M ratchet style shifter. I think I'll be able to use this thing perfectly. Trying to figure out my placement as far as how close I want it to my legs and whatnot. In the middle of the floor right here, I do have a brace. So I was looking at putting it on one side of the brace or the other. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut the floor out in the middle and put this thing right in the middle of the floor. Now I've just been trying to think of different ways I can mount this thing and how I'm going to do that exactly so I can take it in and out as needed. I think what I'm going to do is I've got a big piece of 4x4 tubing here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this tubing so the shifter boot will slide on top of it, and then I'll just make this kind of a shifter box, if you will, or a platform. Then this box will basically just go on the floor. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna recess it into the floor. Just gonna mark the outside. Now this thing's got a flange, so it'll actually sit inside of a lip. I got that thing fitted good enough anyway. Got to do a little bit of massaging on it, but it fits pretty good. Okay, so now I can take this box, set it where I think I want it. Now I'll just mark this thing out. All right, well, there's a floor brace right here, and I thought for sure that I was further back from it, but I was not, and I was cutting halfway through it, so unfortunately now I had to shift it back. So I screwed that up. I'm gonna catch my seat on fire. That's better. There we go. All right, no turning back now. That'll give me about a 15.5-inch length, so I think that's going to be really good. I do have good cutting oil, I just keep forgetting to get it. All right, got the hole drilled, got them all beveled out, looking decent. Now I'm just gonna use a 3/8 bolt for this, for the pivot. I think it's plenty strong enough. Now I did get some little bronze bushings, so probably what I'll do when I bolt this thing together is I'll put the bronze bushings in there and I'll just sandwich this thing like that. I got some of these wavy washers and I'll put that on there. That way I can put a little tension on it as well without having to crank down on it too much. I'll put a spacer in here, bronze bushing, and then shifter, bronze, another spacer, and the bracket, and the nut. I'll level this out on the table. All right, I just want to get these as even as I can. Just give this a snug so it locks those two together. And now this thing, oh look, that's a perfect width. I got lucky there. All right, so now this thing will tack weld onto here, and then I'll figure out the tension on this. I don't know if this is gonna work just yet, but for right now, for mock-up, it's good to go. Okay, that should give me a good base to start with. Yeah, okay, I can move this around. I'll just adjust this tension where I think it needs to be, just like that. All right, now that that's tack welded up together, this thing will just slide inside the box, and then this will bolt down to the bottom of the box, and then this will be bolted into the truck as well. Okay, the next thing I need to do now is just figure out my length here to hook the cable up to. I was trying to figure out that length, messing around on the table and all that. I don't know, I wasn't really getting anywhere with it, so basically what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna weld a piece of flat strap on the bottom of the shifter to the right length. I think it needs to be about 2.5 to 3 inches away from the fulcrum, and I'm basically just gonna guess. I'm gonna drill a couple holes and then we'll be able to put the shifter cable into it and I'll just clamp this to the floor and we'll just see how it works basically. So I'm gonna wing it. Okay, I got a little extension made and got a hole drilled in it. Okay, that should hold it. So now that thing is welded on there, and the cable will come in and hook to that. Okay guys, I had to reconfigure this bushing a little bit. I had to offset the shifter over a little bit because this was hitting right here. So I just added in some, well, what I did was I put in the bronze bushings, then I put that spring washer in here, and now this nut will adjust my tension. So I loosen this nut and I go ahead and tighten this up to whatever tension I want it, and then I jam this one down, and that locks it all together. So that works pretty well. Cable clamped back right here for right now. So that's reverse, neutral, drive, and then 3, 2, 1. Now with that thing being that far forward, that thing's going to come back a lot more. So right now it's really close to the seat. So I may not be able to get first gear once I get it in here, but at least I know my throw is right. So we're in 1, 2, 3, 4, neutral, reverse, park. So it's getting everything right now. So I think that's good at 3.5 inches. I think we're good there. I'm gonna get this thing mounted in the box next, and then figure out the cable mount and get that thing set in the floor, and then we can really figure that out. What I should have done was I should have made this lower mounting bracket, this one here, I should have made this longer, and I wasn't thinking, but that's okay. I can just weld right to this one. Well, when you screw up, you gotta make do with what you got. It is what it is. All right, next I'll have to make some shims. This is the bracket that holds the clamps to the cable, but it's gonna be too low on here, so I just need to make a little riser to lift it up off of this bracket. Okay, so I got my extension welded on that I screwed up, and then I welded on this. This is gonna mount the cable, and then this puts it up at the right height to get it as close as I can to this. So hopefully we should be really close. All right, well, I'm not gonna lie, that shift cable down there, getting it on that bracket and then feeding it in through the floor was definitely a pain in the butt, but it works out. I'll open up this hole just a little bit bigger on the front side and the back side just so I can pivot it in there a little easier, because it's gonna have to come straight up and pivot up and then pull out. But anyway, it's in there. And I just have the vice grips just kind of clamped on here, just letting it float. I did bolt the shifter mechanism to the box itself, so that is secured. All right, so let's see where we're at. This is probably about what I'm thinking. It's about 1 inch up off of the floor. I'm gonna have to reach a little bit to grab the shifter. I can't really bring it up very much more because of the cable mount. It hits the tubing underneath. So I'm kind of limited there, unfortunately, but I think it's gonna be all right. So really, it's not that big of a deal. Right now it's in park. So that's reverse, neutral, drive, and then let's see, drive, so 3, 2, yeah, it's gonna hit, oh, it pushes on the seat, but it does get first gear. That's first right there. So that's not too bad. I wish it was maybe a tiny bit higher, but honestly, there's not much I can do about that. It kind of is what it is at this point. I think it'll be okay though. I mean, it's not like I'm bending over real far to reach. It's just a slight reach. You just got to lean forward a little bit to grab it to put it in drive or reverse. Once you're up here, it's okay. The nice thing is too, is it's low enough and it's out of my way. It's not interfering with my leg in any way. I got plenty of room. You know, a passenger or whatever, if somebody, a third person had to get in here, or the wife's next to me, you know, there's plenty of room here for them as well. All right, well, it's getting the end of the day. I'm hungry. I've been messing with this stupid thing all day on and off, so it's just been a typical deal, you know. Way more work than it's probably worth, you know, instead of buying something. But again, hey, you know what? I don't mind doing something new, like making a shifter. I've never done it before. The one end of this thing boxed up, and then I just put some nuts on the bottom of this to bolt the shifter to. Now my initial thought here is I have an old clevis. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put this clevis around the shaft right here, and I'll drill a hole through here and I'll mount this thing up, and this will be my pivot point. And then this rod will come down and connect to this. As I depress the handle here, it'll lift up, and it'll lift up and down on this clevis here. And I'll cut this clevis off completely, and then this piece of square stock will go on here. But now if I'm gonna do that, this clevis right now wants to hit these brackets, or at least on this side anyway, because it's really close because the shifter's offset. So I'm gonna just grind these edges off and round all these things off. Got these all done. So now when this thing goes through the motion there, that clevis won't interfere. And I went ahead and drilled a hole in the shifter itself for the clevis and got this set up. All right, so before I put this thing back in the truck to test everything again, I want to get this clevis and everything set up, cut, and get this thing fitted. Then put the shifter back in the truck. You'll see. I know how I want to do it in my head. We'll just see how it works out. Now, the only thing I'm worried about, this is going to hinge right here, is I don't have a pivot point down here. There's enough movement in this rod and up here at the handle as well that I think it'll be okay. I think I'm just going to test it though, but that's my only concern one of my concerns right now is not having a pivot down here. I'm trying to keep this entire assembly really tight to the shifter itself because the boot needs to go around this, all of this stuff as well. Okay, drop that in there, push it forward. Now I can hook the cable up. There we go. There's definitely a lot of movement in that cable when it's in park. All right, now that I got everything set up and it in the floor and I cut that front part out a little bit, moved the box forward, now the thing will actually go all the way to first gear, and it's just barely on the seat. It's barely touching it. All right, now as far as this safety mechanism, honestly, I'm really not sure how this is gonna work out. I kind of played with it on the bench a little bit, just trying to figure it out. The problem is if I put something back here, it's pretty far away from the fulcrum. So this wants to travel kind of a strange arc. So I'm not sure how all that's gonna work out. I think what I might do, my very first step, well, I was thinking about making a separate stop here for this, but the detent that I'm gonna make actually will incorporate that. All right, I gotta sit here and play with this thing for a little bit and figure it out. I'm gonna pull the seat out of here so I can lay down on the floor at least and, and get in here and try to figure out this travel and the arc of how it travels and how it's all gonna work. But aside from that, we're getting closer. Okay guys, what I'm working on, I need to figure this out as far as the rod goes, because I don't wanna weld it solid because I'm worried this thing is just it'll fatigue over time and break. So what I'm gonna do is I just took a bolt and I cut the head off of it, and I'm gonna weld a bolt on here, and then I just took a nut and I ground off all the flats. So I'm gonna slide that over this, weld this on here, but I'm gonna let this float, and then I'll weld this rod to this nut right there. It'll hopefully travel properly and it won't bind is my goal anyway. The hard part is gonna be holding this thing in place and without absolutely burning the crap out of my fingers, which is gonna happen anyway, I think. Whew. All right, so I think that'll hold for testing purposes. Let me cut this rod down to length. I've been a little reluctant in cutting this thing because I don't want to screw it up. All right, that looks good. Now, let's test that. Okay, there. I'm hoping this is enough travel, but I guess we'll find out. What I'd like to do is weld this thing on up here, and then, or back here, you know, I'm hoping I can get it to where it'll lift it just enough and I'll make a plate that this will lock into. That's the next thing I'm gonna mess with here and see if I can figure that out. Let me make sure that I'm not interfering. Okay, nope, I'm good. It's in first gear. It's all good back here, no interference. I had some slop in the cable earlier, but I found out that the bracket on the transmission was loose, so that's why I had that slop. So I tightened up the bracket, now I'm good. All right, let me figure this out next. Figure out where I'm gonna place this, or if I'm gonna use this or not, I don't know. The only thing I care about is a park safety, so you'll have to depress the handle to pull it out of park, and then you'll have to pull the handle to put it into reverse from neutral. Those are the only two I care about. I don't care about the rest of them, they don't matter. The detent in the transmission of this thing is strong enough, and it feels really good, so I'm definitely not worried about that. I just wanna make sure that I can't bump this thing out of park. All right, guys, I think I've got an idea. I don't know if it's gonna work, but I'm gonna give it a shot and see what happens here. Okay, I think I got it tacked good enough. All right, so I took that little piece of square stock, tack welded it on the bottom here, so this still floats. And that'll lift up and down. Now the problem is when I pull the shifter back, it's gonna hit this frame right here. All right, here's what I did. I cut this square stock off of here, so now when the shifter goes all the way back, it just goes right inside that plate, and I got plenty of movement. So now what I'll do is I'll just take a piece of sheet metal and somehow I'll just put it up in here, and then I can tack weld it onto here or something. You know, I'll figure this out, something a little thicker than this, and then I can make a little relief in here so that this will slide up, and then I can like tack weld it onto here, so then this will take care of park, and then I can just lift that up out of the groove. I'll try to get it in the middle here, you know, and then I'll do another one for reverse. All right, guys, I'm not gonna lie. This is probably one of the harder things that I've ever done on a vehicle. This is a pain in the butt trying to figure this out. Obviously, this is a hodgepodge of parts, all custom stuff, and I'm working in really tight quarters here too. There's not a lot of room for error and movement and stuff with this shifter. Okay, this is what I'm doing now. All right, so what I'm gonna do is on the driver's side is I'm gonna make the park lock on this side, and then I'll do the neutral on the other side. It's just too tight a quarters over here to mess with any of this, to try to combine the two. So I had some round stock. Unfortunately, I don't have any square left, but this should work just fine. So I just made a quick little tab here, and I drilled a hole through it, and I got it ground to fit. So now what I'll do is I'll set this thing in place right here, right on the bracket, and then inside of there. And I've got the nut, the flat of the bolt right there where it's supporting it. And I'll go ahead, make sure my handle's down and where it's supposed to be. And now what I'll do is, I kind of tested it a minute ago, but test it again here. Yeah, it looks like it'll clear, and then that'll drop down, and then that'll lock in. Now that should be good enough for a park lock. So I'm just gonna tack weld this on real quick. So now that thing will just pull in and out of it. I'll probably have to fine tune it a little bit, but then I had to grind down this bolt here, this pivot bolt, flatter, so it would clear that bracket. I'm gonna have to back cut it just a little bit. Oh my God, guys. Okay, I may have said earlier this has definitely been the worst thing ever. Top of the list, worst thing ever. What a struggle. I guess when you're not an engineer, this type of thing can definitely wear you out, that's for sure. And this thing wore me out. All right, I just didn't, I left the camera off. I kind of started to get a rhythm going, and I got it done. So I basically redid everything, abandoned the round rod. Let me show you what I got going on here. All right, so when I had the round rod on here, it just would not work. By the time it was swinging over this way, it was binding up, and the throw is so close together right here between reverse, neutral, and drive. It is so tight. It really is very difficult to do. Round rod, I couldn't do it. But then I remembered my Maverick shifter is all flat stock. You know, and a lot of shifters, they do use flat stock like this. So once I remembered that, I was like, oh yeah, okay, I need to do this instead. So right now it's locked in park. Pull the handle. That's reverse right there. And you can't push it into park, so you're locked into reverse. You gotta lift it up. Boom, you're into neutral right there, and you can't go into reverse from neutral. You're locked out there without pulling, you know, unless you pull the handle. And then once you're in drive, actually, this just down here, I just got lucky. It actually locks in when you're in drive, so you can't kick it into neutral. I'll probably massage that a little bit so you can kick it into neutral, because you probably really want to, just in case something happened. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy with that. You can see how it's locking in. So there's reversed. You're locked out in the reverse. You can't slam it into park without pulling the handle. Pull the handle, boom, you're in park. So everything slides in nice and neat. So I've just got a piece of flat stock here that's welded onto the hinge right here. And then I just made this up out of a big washer. I just started whittling away at it. I welded this on first, and then I put it in park, and I just held the washer up here, and then I just drew on the washer and started making my marks in each gear, and then slowly just started whittling away at it little by little until that's what I got. Pretty pleased with that. I was about that close from giving up on this deal. Yeah, I was pretty much done with it. I was getting frustrated. It's getting the end of the day, and everything I was doing, just nothing was working out right. So I think I got it. I'm happy with that. What do you guys think of that? All right, so for the most part, that thing is taken care of. I just got a lot of little things to button up here. I got to figure out, I got to finish the flanges around there and all that. I'll see you tomorrow, and we'll get this thing finished up. All right, guys, after I turned the camera off last night, I went ahead and made some modifications to this thing, and I went ahead and put a couple tack welds back on here, and then kind of smoothed it out a little bit. So now, when that thing's in drive, right there is drive. So now when it's in drive, I can just kick it right into neutral, and it locks into neutral. And then just pull the handle for reverse and park. I think I got everything working the way I want it to on that thing now. I'm gonna go ahead and tear it all back out again. And I'm gonna take it all apart. I gotta clean up all the stuff that I welded on it from before and make it look a little bit better, get some paint on it. Let's get this thing apart. Oh, and thank you guys, by the way, for all the comments on the doghouse build, and then your guys' thoughts on the floor of this truck. Now, one thing I did fail to mention when I was talking about that is, yes, I am going to insulate the crud out of this thing. So my plan is when I take this cab off and I finish weld the whole bottom side of this thing, because this is all 1-inch tubing, all the voids underneath the floor, I plan on putting some sort of insulation up there. You know, I don't know if it'll be like a fiberglass insulation that they use on like dog houses or generator housings and all that. There's a couple different names. I can't remember the name of them off the top of my head, but some people had told me about. And, ow. So I'm probably going to end up using something like that. And then I will probably put a sound deadener down inside the cab. And as of right now, I'm thinking about doing wood. I think just doing some kind of laminate maybe. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to insulate the underside. I'm going to finish welding the underside. I'm going to go ahead and seam seal everything. I want to spray like a bed liner spray, one of those DIY deals. I'll spray the underneath of it, and I'll probably spray the inside with it as well, just to completely encapsulate this thing. And then I'll go ahead and put a sound deadener over that. And then let's just do like a laminate floor, and let's see how it turns out and how it looks. And then the beauty of it is if I don't like it, I won't be in it for that much money. I can go ahead and just tear it out and do like a rubber floor mat. Those seem to be the two type things, was the wood floor or the rubber floor mat, the old vintage looking rubber floor, which actually I do like as well. It's easy to clean and I can take it in and out. You know, carpet, I don't really care. This truck doesn't, carpet I don't think go well with this truck. But I definitely do appreciate all the opinions and the thoughts on this thing. It's fun to share this thing with you guys. All right, well, there's a closer look at my madness. But you can see why I was struggling so bad, because up here is park, and it's a pretty long throw into reverse. But between reverse, neutral, and drive, it was an extremely short amount of distance, so it was very difficult. And when I was trying to use the round rod and everything, it was just too big. So this definitely worked out really well. And then having this open like this works perfectly. I'd say the box is done. Got all the flanges on. No matter what I do with the floor now, as far as the thickness of the floor, I can just put this on top of it. I'll have plenty of room to move it up and down a little bit as needed. All right, see if I can get the shifter apart. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do first is I need to weld this first. All right, now I take this apart. I gotta remember how I have all this stuff. Stay. I don't always paint things to make them look pretty, but when I do, it's full of runs. Paint it black and put it back. All right, good enough. It's finally dry enough anyway. It could probably sit for another, I don't know, a few hours, but I'm impatient. I want to get this thing together. I still need to get a lock nut for this. I haven't gotten one yet. So basically what'll happen is I'll forget, and this thing will come apart on me somewhere, and then I'll remember. All right, there's that. Okay, this is gonna be the fun part here. So we've got the bolt. I'm gonna put the bronze and the wavy washer and the other bronze. Then I gotta try to squeeze the nut in there. Okay, right there. Now I can screw the bolt in. And then the bigger bronze. This is definitely definitely tight. Now that I welded this bracket to it, kind of pulled in on each other now too. But I think I got it. Okay, now I can set the tension with that nut in there. Then I can put this one on the outside. And lock it down. Okay, that feels good. All right, let's go get this back in the truck. All right, let's see if this is any easier like this. Put that there. I'm gonna hook up the cable first, because that's the worst part, is hooking this damn cable up. Oh, there we go. That'll help a lot. All right, now I can pull this back into the box, and before I put the cable on the bracket, I'll go ahead and bolt it down to the bottom of the box. I still haven't tested the rubber boot on here, so I have no idea how that's gonna fit, but we'll find out. Now I did drill the floor here for some little bolts, and then later I'll put a seal around this thing. But for right now, I just want to test it. All right, guys, there she is. She's in. Rock solid too. Feels good. Let's test it. 1, 2, 3. Drive. Neutral. I might have to adjust it just a tiny bit. I may have screwed that adjustment up. Can I adjust it back there? Yeah, I can. Okay. I unscrewed the connection at the cable earlier, trying to find a washer, so I have to adjust it back at the training, but we're basically right there. We're locked in park. Reverse. I can't push it into park from here. Pull it up, go down, we're in neutral. And now I'm locked into neutral. Then I can just pull it straight down and I'm in drive. And now I can just kick it without lifting the handle. I can just push it right into neutral right there. Then you gotta lift the handle up, put it right into reverse, lift it up, park. So all the way down, we got good clearance down here. We're getting all the gears. So first, second, third, lift it, fourth, neutral, reverse, park. That thing looks pretty cool too. I like the way it looks. I wish it was a little bit higher. That's drive right there, so it'll be straight up and down. I think it looks really good. All right, let's see if I can get this boot on. I might have to massage this box a little bit. That sounded funny. Okay, yeah, we're not gonna massage the box. All right. All right, I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna leave that one alone. I just don't know if I can get this around the... This nut over here is really tight. This nut over here is really tight to the box. Okay, that's enough. Okay, come on. I think I can get it in there though. I know it's gonna be snug. Try to do this without stabbing a freaking hole in it. Is that in there? Yeah, okay, that's in there. The corners are in. Pretty much, it's most of the way in there. The hinge bolt that sticks out the nut is really big. I'm gonna have to get something thinner, like a really thin lock washer, I think, or a nut, and put that on there to bring that in a little bit. But it's pretty much on. For right now, it's fine. So park, reverse, neutral, drive, neutral, drive, neutral. 3, 2, 1. So yeah, that looks good. All right, so yeah, I'll have to mess with this a little bit more and get these edges a little bit better. This side over here especially. All right, guys, we got her. That wasn't too bad, but I'll be honest, last night I was getting really frustrated. I was almost at my wit's end, like I said earlier. If it wasn't for you guys watching this, I probably would have just called that good and would have never made that safety, but I'm glad I did. This is some of the mess that I was dealing with, that I was experimenting with, and you know, just old pieces. This is the washer that I was using to mock up. You can kind of see where I was marking it and grinding it out and testing it. I just kept at it and I got it. I'm really happy with it. I feel much better knowing that I can't bump this thing out of park, you know. Again, this truck's so heavy, I just don't want any issues with it. Next video, I'm really not sure. I figured out what I want to do with the wheelbase. I was going to talk about it in this video, but this is just getting too long. I'll talk about it next time. I'm not sure if I'll do that next, or I've got everything I think to do the exhaust on this thing, and I think you guys are going to like that. Other than that, man, that's another huge one off the list. So now we've got brakes, steering, the parking brake, the shifter. Some of the major vitals are done. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the support. Get out there and work on your project. You guys have been encouraging me to stay focused on this thing and keep going with it. And I want to encourage you guys to keep going on your project as well. So, all right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.